So this video is to get you to better understand fractions, and not only that, to get you to pass that section on Khan Academy that's titled Ordering Fractions. So we should know, like, let's take a look at one of the screenshots of Khan Academy. It says order the numbers from least to greatest. So we have these three fractions, and we need to be able to determine which one's the smallest one, which one's the biggest one, which one's the one that goes in the middle. Now, there's several ways to compare fractions. One option is to convert all of these denominators to be the same exact denominator. That way you could look at the numerators and just put the numerators in order, right? So this is the biggest denominator, 6, and these other two numbers, could they be converted to that biggest denominator, 6? Yes, that's right. So the 6 is the denominator that we're going to be using, so I'm going to rewrite it. And I didn't do anything to this first 6, or I could say multiply by 1. What I do to the bottom, I must do to the top. So multiply by 1, or just don't do anything, just put a 5 right there. Now the second fraction, in order to convert the 2 to become a 6, I'd have to multiply it by 3. And what I do to the bottom, I must do to the top. And if I multiply 1 times 3 up on top, I will get a 3 up on top. So anyways, let's first start with the denominator. 2 times 3 is 6. That's why my new denominator becomes 6. And 1 times 3 is 3. That's why I have the numerator 3 up here. So whenever you take a fraction and multiply it by a number over that number, 3 over 3, that's really like the number 1. 3 over 3 really is 1. So when you say 1/2 times 1, it's really 1/2. So when we multiply both top and bottom by the same value, it makes it look different, but it's really not different. It just looks different. Okay, so 3/6 is really 1/2. So we still need to convert the 3 to also become the denominator 6. So how could I convert that 3 to become a 6? Multiply by 2. So if I multiply by 2, what I do to the bottom, I must do to the top, and I will end up with 4 up on top. So now that we have the denominator 6 on all three fractions, now I could clearly see my numerators 5, 3, and 4, and now I could rearrange them in order from least to greatest. So which is the smallest number, 5, 3, or 4? 3, obviously. So the first fraction should be the 3/6, which is really that 1/2 up there. So let's write down the 1/2 as our first fraction. Okay. The second fraction after 3 would be the 4, so 4/6 is our second fraction. But we know that 4/6 is really that 2/3. So 2/3 really belongs in the middle when you order them from least to greatest. And last but not least, the greatest value of these numerators, 3, 4, or 5, would be the 5. So 5/6 is the greatest fraction. So this would be the correct order: 1/2, 2/3, and 5/6. And that's what they're asking you to do on this section of Khan Academy, to rearrange the three fractions in order from least to greatest. So that was one example. Let's go over another. Like this guy right here, again, same problem. Put the lowest on the left, the greatest on the right. So order it from least to greatest. And right here, the greatest denominator is 10, but the problem is, yeah, I could convert 5 to become 10 by multiplying by 2, but 6 times 2 is not 10. So 10 is not going to be the denominator that we're using, okay? You start out with looking at the biggest one. That's what you try to change them to, but we weren't able to change them to 10. So maybe we could multiply 10 by 2, and then hopefully both of them could convert to that 20, right? So if I do multiply 10 by 2, that's 20. 5 times 4 is 20, but 6 times something doesn't give me 20. So then I go 10 by 3, exactly. So if I say 10 times 3, that'll be 30. And the question is, could you change 5 to become 30?
Yeah.
Could you change 6 to become 30? Yeah. So 30 is that common denominator that we want. We want to change all three fractions to have a 30 down here. That way we could compare the new numerators and then clearly see which one's the smallest, which one's the greatest, right? So we said we're going to change 10 to 30 by multiplying by 3. And of course, what we need to remember is what you do to the bottom, you do to the top. 9 times 3 is 27. And then over here, the middle one, 6 times what gets you 30?
5.
5. So you need to multiply the top by 5, and you will end up with 5 up here. And then 5 times what gets you 30? 6. So multiply 7 times 6, and what do we get? 42. So we have these three fractions. Of course, I converted this one to 42 over 30. I converted 1/6 to 5 over 30. I converted 9 over 10 to 27 over 30. But we have now those three fractions are all with the same denominator, and now we could simply look at the numerators and see, oh, this one right here is the smallest one. So that's the first one that goes on the list, right? So that would be the 1/6, because again, it came from the 1/6. The next one would be what? 27 over 30, which is really the original fraction 9/10. And the last one, the 7 over 5, the 42 over 30, which was really 7 over 5. So that's our answer, placing them in order from least to greatest. Yeah? Should we try another? Same thing. Yes, let's try another. Okay, let's try another. Okay, so what do you guys say? Could we change the 3 to become that biggest denominator, 12?
Yeah.
Yes, but the 8, could we change it to 12?
No.
No. So 12 is not going to cut it, right? So what would you do next to try the next denominator? Like what would you do to this 12? Multiply it by 2. So if you did multiply it by 2, what would we get? 24. So the real question is, can 3 become 24, and can 8 become 24?
Yeah.
And yeah, the answer is yes to both of those. So 24 is that magic denominator that we need. 24 right here, 24 over here, 24 over here. So I'm rewriting all three fractions, but instead of the current denominators that they have, I'm changing those denominators to 24. And once I have all the same denominators, I'll be able to look at the numerators and then determine which one's the smallest, which one's the middle one, which one's the biggest. So again, the 12 times 2 got me the 24. So what I do to the bottom, I must do to the top. 11 times 2 is 22. How about this 8 right here? 8 times what is 24? 3. So I need to multiply the 9 times 3, and I will get 27, right? And over here, how about this 3? 3 times what is 24? 3 times 8. Okay, so I'm going to go times 8 right there and times 8 up here. And that'll give me an 8. So do we see that we converted this 1/3? We converted it to 8 over 24. We converted the 9/8 to 27 over 24. We converted the 11/12 to 22 over 24. Now that we have the denominator 24 in all three of them, we could clearly see which one's the smallest. And obviously the smallest one is this guy right here, the 8 over 24, which is the 1/3. So this one is definitely the smallest. Okay, and then which one's the middle one? The 11 over 12, right? So when you compare the 27 and the 22, well, this is the middle one, and this is the greatest one. So 11 over 12 is the middle one, 9 over 8 is the greatest one. So let me just write them in order from least to greatest. You have the 1/3, comma, 11/12, comma, and then 9/8. And that's ordering them from least to greatest. Another option would be to use this guy, a calculator. Okay, calculator could do all the work for you. What we need to understand to be able to use a calculator is comparing decimals, because each fraction is really a division problem. So the 1/3 is really a 1 divided by 3. So if you wanted to, you could take a calculator and divide 1 divided by 3. I'm doing that right now on a calculator. And that gives me the decimal 0.333, and it keeps going forever. Okay. If I take 9, this next one, 9 divided by 8, and I do that on a calculator, 9 divided by 8 on a calculator, I will get the decimal 1.125. And if I take the fraction 11 over 12, and if I were to divide 11 divided by 12 on a calculator, I'll get 0.916. 0.916, and the 6 continues. So now that we've converted, so this is another option. You don't have to get common denominators. You could change them to decimals, and then you could compare decimals. So comparing these decimals, and if you struggle comparing decimals, you could always think about money. Like this right here would be $0, but you do have 33 cents. This right here would be like $1.12, well technically 13 cents because of the 5 rounds the 2 up to a 3. So you could look at this as 33 cents compared to $1.13 compared to what? 91 or 92 cents. And you could see, oh, 33 cents is the smallest, 92 cents is bigger, but $1.13 is the biggest. So you could convert them to decimals with your calculators and then compare decimals. But that's technically another lesson, comparing decimals. On this lesson, we're comparing fractions, and the best way to do that would be to change all your denominators so they could be the same, and then you could look at your numerators and see which one's the smallest all the way to the biggest.